Hey guys, Matthew here, and today I want to bring you guys the second episode of the Casual Exile series, and today we are going to be talking all about leveling tips and tools, and there's quite a lot to talk about, so let's get right into it. Now, before I go and start this video, I need to give a huge shout out to a buddy of mine. His name is Killer. I'll have his Twitch and his YouTube. He helped me make this video. He basically went over everything that I had and, fixed some stuff and gave me some additional information. So huge thanks to my boy for helping me out with this one. And if you're trying to get like above and beyond when it comes to speed leveling in the game, his content is going to be literally the best you can find. But that's not what I want to focus on today. Today I want to focus on getting you guys from however much time you're taking to get to the end game, to get to maps, right, to get through the story. And I want to take that time all the way down to about 6 hours, because you can actually take your time, be it like 10 or 20 hours to get to maps, all the way down to about 6 hours on pretty much any build with zero practice. Zero practice. Only good practices, no real practice. And today I want to focus on these good practices that are going to increase your leveling speed a tremendous amount if you're somebody who this is a sticking point for. All right, so let's get right in. We've got quite a bit of things to cover. The first thing is going to be to prioritize life on your skill tree. So what I mean by that is that not every single skill tree will have a million different step-by-step leveling guide. Now, I tend to have some in my skill tree, but still, let's just take ahead and have a look at my Bladefall Blade Blast skill tree, which was my league starter for this league. You'll see that this was my tree for Brutus, but this is my tree for Merveil, right? So for Merveil, you'll see that I added this, but I also added this. This, if we look at it, is damage. This is life. So what that means is during my leveling, after I do the Brutus skill tree, I'm actually going to grab the life. So if I was to hit you guys with a skill tree that looks like this, that would mean that I'm prioritizing all of these different life nodes before the damage nodes at all times, all right? Because guess what? If you die during those really long pathing portion of the game, you can waste minutes at a time having to rerun these different zones, which are very long. And not only are they very long, if you died and you're almost, done with the zone, all these different monsters that you killed during your pathing are no longer there to offer you flash charges and stuff, so you're walking at a much slower pace, no onslaught uptime, etc., etc. There's a lot of downtime that comes with dying during the pathing. So you want to prioritize defenses and life on your skill tree. Very, very important. And same thing with your flask. If I give you an option of having a diamond flask for additional crit or a basalt flask, you probably want to take that basalt flask earlier in the game because you don't want to be dying. Once you get to maps, you can start prioritizing damage. Earlier on, it's all about survivability and actually being able to progress, because you don't progress while you're dead. All right, next thing I want to talk about is using an appropriate leveling filter. So this game has a lot of loot that just drops on the ground, but 99% of the time, this loot is completely useless to you, okay? And this is actually not just the case in maps, it's also the case during your leveling. So it's very important that you use a filter that is basically custom to your archetype. Pretty much every build in the game actually is going to fit into 3 different archetypes: the spellcaster, the ranged, and the melee. And fortunately for you guys, my man Killer actually has you covered. I'm going to have a link in here. Actually, this document will be linked in the description of the video, but you'll see there is going to be a Discord link, and that is going to lead you to his Discord. On his Discord, you'll be able to press this little filter button here and download any of the 3 archetype filter. So if you're playing a caster, download this. Now you'll also have to get the sound files because he's got different sounds for his filter, but that's not too big of a deal. Again, just read through that, figure it out. It's not that complicated, and it's going to save you a tremendous amount of time not having to worry about these garbage drops and picking them up, identifying them, and then they're useless to you, and you're not going to make any money selling any of that gear anyways. So really, just make sure you have a proper leveling filter. That alone is going to save you a good bit of time, not having to double check all these garbage drops. All right, next thing, let's talk about layouts. Now, I think a lot of people put way more emphasis on layouts and the importance of layouts than there really is, okay? You can't get lost that many times in a layout. There are some layouts that are specifically like pretty bad, but most of the layouts in the game are actually pretty linear. But still, there's actually a tool, or at least a cheat sheet that was made by Engineering Eternity, another Path of Exile content creator, a really good one at that. And this here is essentially a cheat sheet of every layout variation in the game. Now, you'll see if you go through the sheet, actually, that most of the layout variations are in the first 4 acts, which was the pretty much the entire game for a very long time before Act 5 to 10 were introduced to the game. So Act 5 to 10, actually the layouts, after you've walked through them even just a few times, they're always pretty much the exact same. There's very little variation. The sticking point is really Act 1 to 4. This is where there's a lot of different layout combination, and knowing all of them by heart takes a lot of practice. But you don't have to, because there is this nice little cheat sheet. Now, if you don't have a second monitor or something to put this cheat sheet on, or if you're somebody who just likes to have it all on their main monitor, so, you know, you can always download this, which will also be in the description of the video, the link for that. And this is essentially a tool that allows you to put this right here as an overlay on your screen, so you don't have to, you know, tab out or look at your second monitor if you're like immersed in your playing, you know. You could actually have it directly in front of you, and not only that, it allows you to also put additional notes on the side for things like gems, links, whatever, anything you need, you can also put there. So I'll have that. This is also going to be very, very useful, but even just using the cheat sheet alone is going to save you an insane amount of time if you're somebody who has very little experience with leveling. If you have some experience with leveling and you're starting to, you know these little patterns, to be honest, these are not necessary, because quite frankly, if you were to path exactly perfectly through every single layout, you would actually mess up your XP and you would be severely under-leveled, which is something you tend to see in racers when they're racing. Their levels are really, really bad because they know exactly where they're going. But for a casual player, that goes... that basically is the opposite of what I said initially. Staying alive, you're gonna die if you're too under-leveled, all right? But still a very useful tool. Now let's talk about exactly that, XP. Now I did just say that you don't want to be too under-leveled, but you do want to be under-leveled. Now there's actually there's a cheat sheet for XP penalties for being too high level, too low level, etc. But I want to keep it very simple here, and I'm going to basically cut the game in half. Part 1 and then part 2, which is actually the way that it is made here. In part 1 of the game, I want you guys to focus on staying 2 levels below the zone at all times, and this is going to double for the part 2, which is going to be 4 levels under the zone. So give you guys an example. If I am in Act 3 and I am in the marketplace, which is level 26 zone, and I'm level 24, I want you guys to literally stop killing monsters. Only kill just enough to maybe keep uptime on your Quicksilver Flask, you know, to have that extra move speed. But I don't want you guys full clearing every single zone. There's no reason to, okay? You're going to get more XP by killing higher level monsters in higher level zones by going through the zones faster than you are if you're like level 29 trying to kill every single monster in the marketplace. There's no reason to do that. You're not going to get anything out of it. Not only that, you're actually going to get penalized for it compared to if you were to just progress faster. So 2 levels for the part 1 of the game, 4 levels for part 2 of the game. And this, if you take just this out of this video and apply it, you will see that you're probably going to take hours less to get to maps than you're currently taking if you're somebody who's full clearing these zones. Because man, you spend so much time going through every little corner of a zone trying to kill every single last monster, which actually doesn't do anything for you. All right, let's talk about next tip, and that is going to be to keep moving, okay? Which is pretty much what I just said. There's no reason to kill every single monster in the game. They don't drop anything, right? So you want to be killing enough just to make sure that you have enough Quicksilver Flask charges. Now you're going to get 2 of these, one in Hellrake in Act 1, and you're going to get a second Quicksilver from the Den Quest in Act 2. And you want to make sure that whenever you're going through the campaign, your uptime on this Quicksilver Flask is going to be one of the biggest factors dictating how fast you can actually get through the game. And if you take like a pretty decent normal player or whatever, and you pair it up against a crazy good racer, even if they had the exact same knowledge when it comes to you know, layouts and how to progress and all that, it wouldn't matter. The person who would win is the person who has the more uptime on Onslaught and their Quicksilver Flask, because it gives you an insane amount of move speed. Now Onslaught is obviously not going to be available for every build, but the Quicksilver Flask is available. So here's what I want you to do. Kill enough monsters to have Quicksilver Flask charges, right? Click your Quicksilver, and during the duration of the Quicksilver, kill nothing. Just run. Whenever this expires, which takes about, 3 seconds or so, 3.5 seconds, I can't quite remember, on base, kill enough monsters to have enough charges again, and then keep running. And not only that, you have 2 Quicksilvers, right? So Anytime you kill monsters, they're going to recover at the same speed, which means if you kill enough monsters to get enough charges for 1 flask, you're actually getting 2 flasks worth. So try to make sure to alternate clicking one and the other and not just spamming both at once, because then you're actually losing a lot of efficiency when it comes to your actual movement. But when it comes to this, again, don't kill every monster. You want to prioritize killing magic monsters. Magic monsters are a lot more efficient to kill because they're a lot easier to kill than rare monsters, but they also give a lot more XP. A pack of magic monsters will give you more XP than a rare monster and its surrounding pack of white monsters, and it's easier to kill. So there's no reason, to be honest, you could literally do the entirety of the game without killing a single rare monster, just focusing on magic packs, and your XP would still be fine if you're killing enough white packs to actually sustain your flash charges. It's really not that hard, right? There's no reason to skip blue packs. Kill all blue packs. That's pretty much what I want you guys to get out of this. All right, next thing is going to be plan ahead. Path of Exile, not only when it comes to leveling, but also making currency and literally anything in the game, is all about planning ahead. And fortunately for us, this game allows us to do that. Now, of course, you can plan ahead using this tool that I mentioned earlier by putting notes, but you don't really have to do that. You could just have a trusty little notepad on your second monitor or just Alt-Tab. It doesn't really matter. I want you guys to plan ahead, okay? Because if you haven't been playing for years, maybe you don't know that this is Divine Ire, and you don't know that this is Sniper's Mark, right? Even I didn't know that these two were actually these, and I've been playing the game for years, right? We don't know every single one of these different gems by heart unless we have a lot of experience. But you don't have to know, right? You don't actually have to go through every single one of these gems to find Pride. You actually can just copy paste, have Pride being, you know, in a little notepad or something, because you know that you're going to be buying it in Act 3, and then you can just, you know, copy it and then paste it. And then there you go. Pride is right there. You don't have to go and look at every single other gem and waste time. And not only that, now this is useful for gems, but I'm sure most people know about that, but it's also useful for links.
Bye.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk to Hargan. This guy's going to offer us a bunch of different pieces of armor. Okay, so here's a really interesting thing that I think is overlooked a lot. You can actually do the same thing for links. So if you type the color of your links with a dash, it actually serves as a way of highlighting different links. Now, the only issue with that is that, unfortunately, GGG, the way that they made this, which is very sad, is that it's only going to do links that are actually like pure colors. So things like blue, 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 green, 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 blue. So it's not like 100% going to be accurate every single time. But for example, if I needed a green, green, green link, I could just go green, 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 and what do you know, it would highlight me this sword. But it's not only useful for that, okay? Even if, for example, I wanted a red, red, green chess piece, and I typed in red, red, green, you'll see that this is not going to be highlighted, unfortunately, but this one will, because it is red, red, green. But what I can do is just red, red, and this is at least going to highlight all of the different items that have 2 red socket linked. And what that does is that if there's a green socket somewhere there, be it at the start or the finish, it's still going to be highlighted. Now, unfortunately, the issue is the green socket, which I do want, is in the middle of these links. It's unfortunately not going to show it to me, but it's still a very useful thing to note, especially if your build uses a lot of pure colors, like, for example, blue, 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 red, red, green, 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 whatever it is. For pure colors, it's very nice. So on top of having little notes set aside for your skill gems, also have these little notes set aside for your actual links, because links are pretty much over anything else in this game when it comes to leveling. Links over life, links over literally anything else, because without links, your character doesn't work.
Bring me back.
All right, let's move on. Plan ahead V2. So I talked about planning with your items, and I talked about planning with your skill gems. But why not plan where you're going? Why not plan your trip, right? So the thing about this is that there are some zones and some acts in the game which actually have a lot of different variety. Act 2 is like the perfect example for that, right? Act 2 goes 2 ways, and then in both ways, it also goes 2 ways again. So plan where you want to go and also what you're going to be doing in that specific zone. So for example, something as easy as this would be very, very helpful. For example, in Act 2, you do the den. in the old fields, and this is for your Quicksilver Flask, all right? So in the old fields, I'm going to be doing my Den quest, get my second Quicksilver so I can keep moving faster. Next, I'm going to get the stone in the Chamber of Sins, and I need to make sure that I don't forget the trial in the second floor, okay? So after going to the old fields, I'm going to progress all the way up to Chamber of Sins, go to the second floor to get the stone from the Fidelitas, and also make sure that I don't forget my trial of Ascendancy. Very little quick notes that are going to keep you on track and not just going, you know, one way and then the other and then the other and just wasting time. Make sure that you know what you're doing and that you don't get lost, okay? Every single time you go somewhere, there should be a reason why you're going there. Now, if you guys want, I can actually prepare you a little bit of a like roadmap, if you will, of how to do every single act, like which objective you should be doing and where it is, without considering any build in particular, just like how I go about leveling any character. I can prepare that and put it in this spreadsheet. Just let me know in the comment section if that's something you're interested in, and I'll be sure to add it. All right, next let's talk about the most important thing when it comes to character defenses, defense early game, and that is going to be resistances, okay? Trust me, a blue piece of gear or even a white piece of gear with crafted resistance is actually better than a rare without. Even if that rare has life, and I said that you need to prioritize life, you need to prioritize life on your tree. You need to prioritize life over damage. On top, in terms of gear, you need to prioritize resistances over anything else. You're not really gonna die no matter how little life you have in the leveling portion of the game if your resistances are in check. So you really want to try to get this 75 resistance as early as possible. Now, I'm not saying that you should farm a Hillock in Act 1 to try to get 75 all res in Act 1. That's not the case. But around Act 4 is where you should really start thinking about prioritizing a lot more resistances, because in Act 5 you're killing Kitava and you're going to get penalized with that -30, right? Which you're going to need to make up for. So around Act 4 is typically where I really start to put a lot of priority on resistance on my items over anything else. For example, well, I don't have any, but getting 2 stone rings instead of single res rings are very nice, because they allow you to have an easier time mix and matching those resistances to try to get, you know, res capped by Act 4, or at least whenever you start or you're about to finish Act 5. So resistances over life, over stats, over damage, over everything else, because this is what keeps you alive during the actual leveling portion of the game. And what goes hand in hand in that is that you can actually craft them, right? Like I said earlier in the video, links are over everything else. The actual ability to use a character that works. So for example, having proper links on your gear is going to be by far the most important thing. So if you have a chance between having a rare pair of boots with 10 movement speed and a bit of life, but that has horrible links, or having a 3-link pair of boots, which are exactly the links that you need for your main skill gems that you don't have anywhere else, even if those don't have life and they don't have move speed, I would still prioritize the boots with the links, because at least my character is going to be at an optimal like ability to actually play my character, right? And not only that, even if those boots are white and they have nothing on them, I can just craft a resistance. It's only an orb of transmute. By the time that you reach Act 4, Act 5, you should have like 10 to 20 of these. It's not that big of a deal. You're not going to be using them later on in the game. There's no reason to hoard transmute orbs. Craft resistance on your gear and try to keep your resistances as close together, right? So for example, if you have 75 fire res but then 20 cold and 20 lightning, try to make sure that you remove some of that fire res, even if it means being uncapped. So let's say you take it down all the way to 55. If it means that your cold and lightning are going to be more in line with that, so like 55, 50, 50 is a lot better than 75, 20, 20, because every percent of resistance is actually 1% less damage taken by elemental damage. So if you have 75 of one, but then 20 of the other, that means if you have 75% damage reduction when it comes to fire, but then you have only 20 for lightning and cold, so you're going to get frozen much easier, you're going to get chilled, you're going to get shocked, you're going to die, right? It's about trying to get literally all of them as close as possible, even if it means that one of them is not going to be capped, or that multiple of them are not going to be capped. It's not that important to be capped res before, like I said, Act 6, past that Kitava fight. whenever you get that resistance penalty, that is typically where I start to really transmute a lot of my gear. Pretty much, I go through the entirety of the first part of the game, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I kill a Kitava, and then my resistances are messed up. I go ahead and get to my hideout. I use as many transmutes as I need to use to make sure that I have as much resistance as possible, try to get those capped out, and then I'm pretty much ready to go and to blast all the way up to Act 10 Kitava. And most of the time in my runs, between crafting those resistances in Act 6 and finishing Kitava in Act 10, I don't even change a single piece of my gear, because starting in Act 6, your links are going to be set in stone. You're going to have all your actual main links for your gems, especially because you buy the missing ones from Lily, but also because you're going to be res capped and you're not going to be penalized before you kill the next Kitava. So I typically don't even pick up any items. I just try to get to the end game as fast as possible and prioritize defense over damage again. And then the next tip I want to give you guys is that deaths are okay. Now, this kind of actually goes against everything I've said in this video about staying alive, but what I'm talking about here when I say deaths is I'm talking about deaths against bosses. There's nothing wrong with literally throwing your body over and over and over at a boss, because if you prioritize defense on your tree and you prioritize defense on your gear, you're maybe going to have very little damage. Now, very little damage is still enough damage to get you through the entirety of the story, especially in those zones, right, where you're pathing through the zones and just killing random monsters. Defenses are way more important than damage, but unfortunately some of the bosses are a little bit overtuned. For example, even Merveil in Act 1 is actually really difficult. But it's okay to just die over and over again. It's also okay to do strategic deaths. If you're out of flash charges, instead of running around like a headless chicken trying to get flash charges on ads or something, just die. There's no reason not to. You don't get penalized. You don't get XP penalized. And if you did, even later on in the game, it's such a little XP penalty that you're going to make that back within minutes when you actually reach maps. So there's no reason to try to save your life. Now, this is only for softcore players. If you're a hardcore player, don't listen to that tip. Dying is not very good for you, okay? But for softcore, prioritize defense, and when you get to those really overtuned bosses that require a lot more damage, just don't be ashamed of just dying over and over, because guess what? Unlike, for example, if you died in the ship graveyard around the end of the layout and then you're just transported back to the beginning of the layout and you have to walk all the way through, bosses are pretty much all instance based. So even if you die, you're going to be resurrected at checkpoint, which is going to be right outside of the boss room. You're one click away from being right where you were before you died. You spend maybe 5 or 10 seconds, but you get all of your flash charges back, and maybe you get to reset your arena. You get to reset your actual placement in the arena and how you're going to be fighting that boss. There's just no reason not to just literally throw your character's life away if it means that you're going to have a better time killing those bosses. And again, if it's faster, just do it, all right? And the final tip that I want to give you guys is going to be very useful and something that I highly recommend you try to remember. If you can't remember, that's okay, because again, plan ahead. You can always plan which recipes you're going to be needing and when you're going to be needing them. But vendor recipes are actually insane in this game, and there's 3 different ones I want you guys to keep in mind. The 3 most important ones, okay? The most important one is going to be for damage, which I'll talk about, but the second most important one is going to be the ring recipe. So remember how I said that resistances were very important? Well, if you're having issues with resistances and you're getting unlucky, you're not dropping those resistances, these resistance rings, you can just craft them yourself. If you drop an iron ring or even buy one and then you vendor any gem of either red, green, or blue, it'll give you a ring that is either fire res, lightning, or cold res. And this can be done at any point in time in the game. Now, I did say that you want to prioritize 2 stone rings, but that's not going to be available until like Act 3. So for the first 2 acts, if you're ever lacking resistance, for example, I said that Merveil was a really hard boss to kill, but you can pretty much make her do 0 damage to you and make it a much safer fight by just having a simple sapphire ring, and you can always just craft one of those. Fidelitas in Act 2 is a pretty sketchy mini boss, if you will, and if you die to him, you have to run all the way through Chamber of Sins level 2 again. So having a topaz ring pretty much makes him useless, and you can just face tank him. Okay, there are certain places in the game where having resistance is going to be very important. Again, if you guys are interested, I can add these little tips in the actual sheet. Just let me know. All right, and the next thing that I want you guys to remember is going to be how to get very easy damage on pretty much any archetype in the game. All right, if you're leveling a caster, your best friend is going to be the ring recipe. So what that is that you need to sell a magic scepter, wand, or rune dagger, most of the time going to be a wand, with a white, magic, or rare ring. The white recipe will be level 8 requirement. The magic will be level 14, and the rare will be level 20. And of course, the higher the higher item level, the higher level requirement, sorry, the stronger the craft is going to be, which you can read on the side here. But normally, when I'm leveling, I will actually use one of these recipes at level 20. I will skip the white and the magic one. I will only do the rare one. I'll do two of these recipes, which gives me T6 flat lightning, because I typically do the lightning one for Topaz, because it's the higher range is lightning damage, so typically more damage is what that's going to mean. And I'm going to do two of them, and these wands that I craft in Act 2, at the end of Act 2, are actually going to carry me all the way up to maps. I'm never going to actually upgrade my weapons. Not only that, because when you do this, it gives you a prefix on your item. If you don't know what that means, items have different things called prefixes and suffixes in your different affixes. So as you can see, I have prefix life, prefix fizz. This is not a crafting video. I don't want to talk too much about that. But this mod here is a prefix. So you actually have an open suffix, which ties really well in the previous tip that I mentioned, craft resistance. You can just craft resistance on your wand. It's not because it's a weapon that it needs to be only a damage dealing tool. Okay, and the next one I want to mention is going to be for physical build, so be it like a bow physical build or like a melee physical build for the second archetype, and that is going to be to actually craft physical damage. You can do so by using a blue or a rare rustic sash. The higher rarity, the more damage it's going to offer, and a blacksmith whetstone, and any weapon. So what you're going to want to do if you're leveling one of these builds, especially a melee build, is take note of all of the best bases during the leveling for which axe you're going to be using, be it one hand or two hand, or which mace or whatever it is, right? And then whenever you pick one of those up, which is normally going to be every 2 to 3 axe or even 4 axe, you're going to want to upgrade your weapon. You're going to do this recipe, and this recipe here is actually going to be better than literally 99% of the axes that you're going to pick up on the ground. So it's very, very powerful. And remember how I said rare topaz ring, and here it's like rare rustic sash? Now dropping a rare topaz ring or a rare rustic sash can be hard. So the best way to go about this is to use essences. Now you start encountering essences as early as Act 1, so make sure that you kill a couple of them along the way so you can get some essences that you can just slap on either a rustic sash or like a ring or something to turn it into a rare without having to waste an alchemy orb, which does have some value at the start of a league, of course, and not only that, they're pretty rare. So you just use a useless essence, and then you can do your recipes without, you know, wasting any valuable resources. And that pretty much does it for all of the tips that I have for you guys. This was made, again, with my good friend Tai Killer, so huge thanks to him for helping me make this list. But that's pretty much all I have. So before I go, as always, I do want to say a huge thank you to my patrons. So we have Johnny, Michael, Cluzy, Zerashi, Lero, Gaikona, JW Player, Scott, Justin, Alex, Ollie, Matt, Kevin, Hayden, Bitizen, and Axel. If I forgot anything, feel free to let me know in the comment section. And if you guys actually do end up using some or maybe even all of these tips, please let me know how much you actually improved your leveling speed by, because I'm very curious. I'm pretty sure that, like I said at the start of the video, anybody who uses all of these can literally take their leveling from 20 hours to 6 hours with zero practice. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. That'll be Matthew signing out. Peace.